Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we are live at the Hy-Vee Club Room. And so happy to welcome all of you here. This is a terrific 60 minutes of deliciousness, and it's going to feature Italian food specifically, brought to you by the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans. And we're going to get to them in just a few minutes, but first, it's my pleasure to introduce Emily Rose Shaw, who is a holistic health coach. And as those of you know who listened or watched the show, actually, or were at the show, all those different options last week, Emily's going to be with us for 6 months at the beginning of every show to discuss different things related to your health and give you pointers and suggestions for how to live a happier, healthier life. So, Emily, happy to welcome you back. This is really our official first show, right?
It is. I'm so excited to be here. I really am.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about a very funny word.
Yes, we are.
G-bombs?
G-bombs.
Okay.
So for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about some of the most nutrient-dense superfoods you can find anywhere that you can find in a grocery store that anyone has access to. And for that, we're going to use an acronym called G-bombs, which actually was developed by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who's a world-famous nutrition researcher and this amazing, board-certified physician who helps to really prevent and treat disease with nutrition. And so the first letter G is greens, and a lot of people are familiar with lettuces and spinach, but we have access to so many different kinds of greens these days, such as like bok choy, mustard greens, even weeds. Chickweed and purslane are incredibly beneficial. Greens have so many different phytochemicals and nutrients. They have vitamins and minerals and enzymes and chlorophyll, which is very cleansing and detoxifying to the body. So they're really disease-fighting, immune system boosting foods. And they also have folate and iron and protein. Most people don't think of protein with greens, but an average green smoothie, which we'll talk about down the road, has between 7 and 8 grams of protein. And we can eat greens in unlimited quantities. For my clients and everyone, I say eat as many greens as you possibly can, because there's about 100 calories per pound of greens, so you can really eat them in unlimited quantities.
So you can't see this on the radio, but it must be why I'm wearing a green shirt. Anyway, so, all right, greens are good for us. Great. Mm-hmm. Why don't we eat more of them?
Okay, so there's many common reasons that I thought of that, we don't eat them. One being maybe we didn't grow up with them, which really isn't an excuse anymore. I mean, we have so many, you could almost find them anywhere. And maybe we have a poor association from childhood of them tasting bitter or tough, or, have a really strong flavor. And maybe we don't know how to store them properly or wash them, and we don't know how to use them in recipes. So throughout the show, we're going to go over some of these solutions to the problems.
I could tell my Brussels sprouts story, but I think I'll spare everybody because if you use your imagination, my parents made me eat Brussels sprouts one night. Think about it. Where should we buy greens?
Okay, so I went to the Fairfield Farmers Market here over the weekend, and I got this dino kale and these Japanese collard greens, and they're so beautiful. I mean, I got them on Saturday, and they've lasted, in the fridge up until now. So I love kale and collard greens. They're like the king of greens in terms of nutrition. And they're also really easy to wash. I also like mustard greens and curly kale, but those tend to be, they have all the crevices and they're a little harder to wash. So I really prefer these. And let's see. So in terms of buying them, you can buy them at the grocery store, but the farmer's market, there's so many benefits to getting them there. The value is better, they're going to last longer, they're going to taste better, you're supporting your local economy, and also a lot of them are usually organic or pesticide-free, which is really important for greens because they're often really heavily sprayed. So there's many different reasons why you should get them at your farmer's market.
And what are the best ways to store the greens after you buy them?
Yeah, sure. So to wash and store them, at home what I do is I actually use a salad spinner, which most of you are familiar with, but it's a really great way to wash them and store them. So what I do is I just take a green like this, and I just literally use my hands and tear it into little pieces and then throw it in the salad spinner, and you just kind of rinse it really well a few times until the water you don't see any more dirt in the water, and you spin them dry, and then you just store them in the fridge, and they last quite a while. Now, if you don't have a salad spinner, you can also wash your greens in a colander, and then you can put them on a clean dish towel and pat them dry, and then store them in a Ziploc bag with a little paper towel in there to help absorb the moisture. And then if you're in a pinch for time, you can get the greens that are in prepackaged that are already washed, and you can just use them right away for your recipes. And actually, I think there's a sale right now at Hy-Vee here in Fairfield where you can get 2-for-1 salad greens. So everyone can go buy salad greens after the show.
Now, I just want to ask you another question as far as preparing the greens. Mm-hmm. What you were saying is that you take each leaf, for example, each stalk, and you tear it up and put it in your salad spinner. So we're eating actually the stem and the ribs, I guess you would say, and the leafy green itself, both.
I think it really depends on the kind of green. If it's this kind of green, which is really kind of like a baby kale, I would just go ahead and use the stem. But in the case of the collard greens, if the stem's a little thicker, then I would just kind of rip it off the stem.
All right. And what are some tasty ways that we can eat greens?
Actually, that we're going to do next week.
Oh my gosh!
We're going to leave the suspense.
I don't know if I can handle it, but I'll try.
Next week, I'm going to talk about my favorite ways to eat greens, and I'm also going to reveal my top tips for getting more greens into your diet. So,
based on that we need to get more into our diet, are we talking about, do we have to eat them breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Do we one time a day? What's the deal?
You actually can eat them for breakfast. I actually do every single day, and it's very tasty. And so next week I will be giving a menu of how you could eat them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Okay, but right now it's 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Emily, thank you very much. Emily Rose Shaw, holistic health coach, and one more thing. Okay.
Yeah. One more thing. I'm starting a little community on my blog. So if you go to emilyroseshaw.com, you can actually listen to the clip again to get the information, and you can post your comments or your questions, and I can answer them.
That's great. Emily will be with us for 6 months, right? Yeah, 6 months at the beginning of each episode, and you're guaranteed to be healthier if you listen to her every week, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's go to Italy. I know we have greens in one of these dishes, so that's awesome. But before we get there, Tom Allen is with us. Tom provides our musical interludes. So, you have any Italian stuff for us?
Yes, and I also have something to do with greens. I have green socks on, as the radio audience can very clearly see.
That's great, Tom. Thank you. Let's move on. We'll come back to you later, maybe. I'm not sure. All right, so we have with us a number of members of the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans. Now, I have to start off by saying there are 2 members of the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans who are not Italian, and they both happen to be here. And one of them is Virginia Roca, who is going to be talking a little bit later, and I'm the other one. So that's pretty exciting. Anyway, if there's time, because I'm sure it's such an amazing story as to why we're members and not Italian, we'll cover that. But otherwise, let's move on to some real Italians. So Pete D'Olive his parents are from Calabria, his family's from Calabria, and he wanted to tell us a little bit about the dish he's going to prepare because he wanted you to actually know something about it before he started to actually make it.
Okay, well, actually, due to time, I'm going to start frying these, explain what they are, and then I'll go into a lot longer discussion of where they come from. These are, let's go over here and show them. These are green tomatoes and peppers that have been prepared in this crock of my mother's in this Southern Italian recipe with garlic and fresh anise seed, or dried anise seeds and a lot of salt, and then pressed in the crock. And there's a whole process that I can show you, but right now I want to get them going because they take about a half an hour, and I just got this, my mom's frying pan and some hot olive oil from Calabria.
Hey, Pete, let me ask you a question. How long have those been pressing in the crock?
Since about the end of September. When it starts to get cold at night and the tomatoes aren't getting ripe anymore outside, you start bringing them in and cutting them up and putting them in the crock and going through this process.
And do they get put in under a certain amount of weight?
Well, that'll take me about 5 minutes to go over the whole thing. I can do that later separately. Yeah, they get pushed with a weight. Okay,
so you want to wait.
Yes.
Okay, you were supposed to laugh, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's all right. You guys have to. If you need more chairs, are there more chairs back there? If not, we can ask. Okay, so that's great. All right. So we're going to talk with Dick DeAngelis because, Dick, you were actually one of the founders. You are, or the founder or co-founder of SOFIA, the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans, right?
That's right, and we've been now together a little over 8 years, so been in Fairfield quite a while. We started out just trying to find some place where we could cook our Italian meals together, and we thought maybe a few people would come to that party, and we ended up having about 50 of us or something like that, and since then we formed a group, and over and above our own little private meetings, we have our big festival once a year on the square, and this year it's June 15th, by the way, Saturday, the All Things Italian Street Festival. We'll have a lot of music. We just confirmed today musicians from all over the country coming, some of whom came last year, and since it rained, they decided they would make the effort to come again because they had such a good time, and so we'll have them. We'll have amazing food. It'll be a real big party on the square.
All right, so what are you going to make for us?
So when I came to Fairfield, there's a few foods that you don't quite find in Fairfield, Iowa that you used to find back home in New Jersey. And
Is that close to Italy, by the way?
It's as close as you can get. So one of the things was this, what they call now artisan bread or paisano bread. It says like a rounded loaf. Is that a rock over there?
I don't know. I think there's a big rock, and also the smells that are emanating from here. Like it's amazing. So we're going to have to try to stay focused because this is going to be tough.
So that rock is about what paisano bread looks like.
That is a big rock. Yeah. Hopefully your bread isn't that hard, though.
Except for it tastes really good. So I couldn't find the recipe that my grandmother used to make for us. The Italian bread, she'd make probably 6 or 8 loaves, and then near the end of the week it got a little hard. But it was amazing bread, and I couldn't find it. And people would tell me, oh, put water in the oven, and that didn't make the crust I wanted. And so I found it at the bastion of Italian libraries, which is the Des Moines Register. And believe it or not, there was some article about this newfangled thing, this was 15 years ago, called the Internet, and that this story had swept the Internet about this guy from, is it O'Sullivan Bakery in New York?
Sullivan Street Bakery, James Leahy.
Right, James Leahy. And what had happened is he was getting interviewed, and then the person goes, that's amazing bread. And then they said, well, what do you do at home when you don't have the thing? He goes, oh, I have a recipe at home. I change it this way. And they said, well, can I write that in my article? So he said, sure, I don't care. So they wrote it, and then it got spread throughout the Internet. And the people in the Des Moines Register were writing about this idea of news spreading so quickly. And they wrote up this little article, which I brought for you, about, and including the recipe of this no-knead bread. And I made it because I went and looked at it. I won't tell you where I was, but it's where I read the Des Moines Register most of the time. And and I yell out to my wife, that's my bread! You know, which is kind of, I wondered what she was thinking. But it ended up that I made the bread, and it came just the way my grandmother made it. It's a very simple recipe. You put 3 cups of, oh, by the way, we have this recipe for anybody who wants to take a look at it at gardenofbliss.org/bread recipe. So we put it on there today just so you could get it. Garden of Bliss is the greenhouse that my wife Karen helps run at Marshy School. She brought some fresh rosemary for some people to smell and taste and pass around. And from the greenhouse, it's an amazing place. The kids are learning fabulous stuff there about the greens and all those things, and it's a whole seed to table program. So anyway, all you do is put 1.5 teaspoons of salt with 3 cups of flour. And I love these new cup things because it's 1.5 cups, so I only have to use 2 of them. And then I put my yeast, which is only 1/4 teaspoon, very, very little yeast. I put it in some regular warm water just for a little bit. I don't know what you call that. You probably know there's a name for that. But it just helps the yeast out just a tiny bit for a few minutes. And then I just pour it in there. And this is such an easy recipe. Really, anybody can do this. And I use this. I got this at Breadtopia, breadtopia.com, Eric Rush's little place. And I love his place for bread recipes. And you just mix it together just that easily. It's that easy. And by the time you're done, this will be the start. And I actually have done this for you all in a whole bunch of different stages.
You mean we actually don't have to sit around here for several hours and wait for all this to happen?
No, because one of the things is even though you don't do any kneading, this might need a tiny bit of water, more water, by the way. Here.
There's the dough in a different stage. The dough after it's been, the water's been incorporated, the yeast and the water have been incorporated, and now you have your dough. It's
right.
It's not ready to right.
12 to 24 hours, and you really can be flexible. So if you started at 4 in the morning, you don't have to do. Or 4 in the afternoon, you don't have to do it at 4 in the morning. You can wait till 8 in the morning or whatever, and then you take it out. And what's really kind of nice about this is.
So actually what happened is you've got your flour, your water, your salt, and you've been and your yeast, and you've just been letting it sit for 12 to 24 hours, like you said. And then you're just going to put it right onto your floured board.
Little sill pad or board. And then what happens is you get a feel for it, and if it feels a little wet, you put a little extra flour down. And then what I do is I'll just fold it once, maybe twice, and you really have a tough time of messing this up. You really have to work at it in order to mess it up.
Flour your hand stick.
And I like this because of that, because I don't know about most of you, but I'm not an expert. And I would guess that my grandmother, even though she was, would say the same thing. So I folded it a bunch of times.
So basically you have a round circle of dough, and you're just folding it in half, and then you're folding that in half again.
Right, and again a few times. Then I'm going to let it sit, put a piece of plastic over it for about 15 minutes, and in about 15 minutes, I'm going to round this a little more, put some more dough underneath, and then I'm going to let it sit. And at this time, it's going to sit for about 2 hours. Which, by the way, is just how long this one has already set.
So there's a loaf here that we're actually seeing that has been sitting for about 2 hours, and it's risen a little bit. It looks really nice.
So now this is ready to put in the oven. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the. I'm actually going to go to the oven. We're not going to be able to do this on the mirror, so I'm just going to tell you what I have is, and this is the trick. In a 440-degree oven, we've had our pot, and you know those little blue pots that have the speckles on them? They're the cheapest pots you can buy. You buy them, go camping. That's what I use. Some people use beautiful.
It's like a canning pot.
Right. Some people use the beautiful cast iron, and that is a great thing to use. But I bought the $8 one, and then I had to adjust my. It got a little burnt on the bottom when I first did it, so I kind of made a little adjustment to the temperature down about 10 degrees and the amount of about 5 minutes, a little less. What you do is you have this in with the top on, and it's getting hot, almost like a clay oven, okay? So it's ready for you to put the
So wait, I'm just going to describe this. So what Dick's doing is he's putting this, he's got his enameled pot in the oven, and it's actually been cooking, essentially. And now he just took the dough that had been rising for 2 hours and poured it into that pot. Now, are we going to do anything else with it other than pouring it in there?
Something really quick.
It's really it's tough to show people on radio, so
Just basically throw it in there. And then
so you just put it in the pot and put it in the oven.
right.
And
then you let it go for about 20 minutes. And then you take the top off. And then you let it brown a little more for another 20 minutes.
And is that recipe, does that include all these instructions?
Yes.
Okay, and the URL again for that recipe?
It's gardenofbliss.org/bread recipe. And what comes out is this.
Beautiful loaf of bread. Absolutely gorgeous. And we're going to get to eat that later?
Yeah, we're going to actually make the next dish with that, but I wanted to show you kind of the whole process. This we made and came out of the oven about 4 o'clock this afternoon.
All right, so we're going to get back to that.
That's simple, and bread like this, it's really hard to find. You pay a lot of money for it. It's a simple bread, but it's delicious, and it's really easy to make.
All right, we're going to get back to step 2 then, what goes on the bread, in a little bit.
Yes? Does that mean it's time for music?
Come on already, let's go.
Here we go. Here we go. Italian opera music, right?
Tom Allen. Question from one of the members of our audience. Don't touch that mic. You started to.
Well, we wanted to know what kind of flour that you use, Dick, and also if it would work with gluten-free flour, because I'm cutting down on wheat.
All right, so what kind of flour is used for this particular bread?
If you're cutting down on wheat, you can't have any. No, I'm just teasing. Yes, I have not made it with gluten-free, so I can't tell you. This is Bob's Red Mill unbleached white flour. I have used whole white flour and mixed it with this unbleached white.
You used whole wheat, you mean?
Yeah, they call it whole white. It's whole wheat, but it's
whole white, huh? Okay, well, whatever.
There's a whole story. You should learn about it. It's really interesting stuff. But it actually has the whole grain, and it is white and a tiny bit lighter, and it's really good for cooking bread. But it still will be a little heavy for me if I use it 100%, so I mix it. And it's just what you like. I would just suggest to the people that have any concern, I'd rather have one small piece of bread that's really, really good than to eat a lot of bread that's average. So that's just kind of my read on it.
So I think if you want to find something that's gluten-free, the best thing is just to get on the internet and start searching, because there are so many recipes out there. And we've had Jean Sauvage on the show before a couple times, and she has a book which probably does include some type of bread, even though it was a holiday recipe book. And there are local resources, too. If you look at, there's a woman at Indian Hills, who has a celiac son, and so she has a lot of gluten-free recipes. So if you need to get in touch with her about her recipes, we can talk about it afterwards. Okay, so while we're letting Dick's Bread move on to its next stage, Dan Raymond is here, and you are making another traditional family recipe.
That's right, Steve. I'm making a dish called minestra fazool. And minestra typically means vegetable stew. But in this case, it's just mixed vegetables with beans. Fazool is beans. And tonight we're using Savoy cabbage, white cabbage, chard, and that's it. But typically my grandmother... and kale. Thank you, honey. And typically my grandmother would also use escarole, but we didn't have any escarole, so we skipped that. And then you can either make it with northern beans, or tonight we're using cannelloni beans.
Cannellini.
Cannellini beans.
I'm saying that because that's a true Italian type of bean, so that's perfect.
Perfect. So it's a very simple process. As a matter of fact, we can. Do we want to show them what it looks like, or not necessary?
If you'd like, absolutely. And while you're getting that ready, I'll tell everybody that they're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. And we're coming to you live from the Hy-Vee's Club Room, and the show features SOFIA, the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans, and traditional recipes from their family members. I'm talking with Dan Raymond right now. By the way, I'm Steve Boss. That was a bit of information that really isn't that important. But Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about... I'm glad this is on radio, actually.
Well, here's, for those of you, I don't know if you can see it, this is a picture of my grandmother and 3 of her sisters. You can't see it from that distance, but they're all...
Or over the radio.
They're all in black dresses. None of them are smiling, and believe it or not, they're at a backyard wedding. This is not a funeral they're at. So this was, typical what it was like back in the 1930s. And my grandmother lived with us. She was the... kind of the chief cook for the whole family. Everyone came to our house for every holiday. And my grandmother was the first child in her family born in America in 1896. And this dish, along with other dishes that she typically made, she referred to as peasant dishes. And the reason why she called them that is because her family were peasants. They came from Calabria and Abruzzi in Italy. They were poor when they came to America. Her father worked in a factory. They had 8 children, and they need to make dishes that were nutritious, filling, and inexpensive. And so dishes like this, like pasta fazool, pasta basil, pasta badan, notice the pasta in all of these dishes, and minestra fazool were inexpensive. They usually involve beans and pasta, some greens, so you got a lot of protein, you got a lot of nutrients, and they were filling, great dishes in the winter. I mean, this was a house that was heated by a coal stove that was in the kitchen. That was the whole heat for the whole house. And so this is a kind of dish that these people had to make to, meat was very uncommon in their house. When we grew up, we're a little more affluent. When my grandmother would make this dish, we would always have pepperoni with it. That would be the other thing that we'd have that we're not having tonight. So this was a very easy dish, and you can make it in 30 minutes at home. If you take a can of northern beans, if they're already cooked, you saute a little onion and garlic in some olive oil till it turns translucent. It takes about 5 minutes. Dump in the beans with a little bit of water, mix them around, and let them cook for about 15 or 20 minutes. While they're cooking, you just wash the greens, chop them up, put them in a pot, steam them. It takes about 7 to 12 minutes. Mix the two together, and in 30 minutes you have a great dinner or lunch that you can make any time. So that's what we're having tonight.
And what was your family name? Because I noticed it on the page.
Well, my grandmother's name was Ianico, and my father was Donato Raimondo. But when he started school in Paterson, New Jersey in first grade, when he showed up to class on the first day, the teacher asked him his name. He said Donato Raimondo, and she slapped him across the face. She said, "You're in America now. You go by Daniel Raymond." And so he was the first kid to start school in America. So when all of his siblings showed up, they didn't bother to say their last name was Raimondo. They just said Raymond because they didn't want to get slapped by the same, first grade teacher. So
well, one good thing is that couldn't happen today without repercussions. And Pete, your family also from Calabria, and you're busy frying up these beautiful tomatoes and peppers.
Yep. That's right, and my father came in 1920, and my mom came in 1949. They got married in 1933.
Wait a minute.
There's a lot of back and forth there. This is actually a colander of my mom's that was a wedding present from 1933. My brother and sister were born in Italy. My dad kept going back and forth, and then World War II intervened, and so I was born here in the U.S. in 1949.
And when he was going back and forth like that, was it strictly because of economic reasons?
Number of reasons, but she really didn't want to come to the U.S. But after she had 2 kids, he insisted, and she still didn't want to come. And he said he would take the kids, so she came. And the whole time I was growing up, she cursed Christopher Columbus for discovering America.
Good news is that he really didn't, so it's okay, I guess.
That's what happened.
All right, tell us a little bit about
a picture. My lovely wife here. I'll pass this around if you want, and he can get a close-up later. There's a picture of them in 1933, which is 80 years ago. So, you want to know about how...
I do. I want to know all about the special equipment that's used, because it's probably something you could easily do at home yourself with your produce from your home garden, right?
Pretty much. The thing is, my mom grew up, all of southern Italy. They didn't have refrigerators and freezers. They figured out ways to preserve the food for the whole winter, all this food they're growing in the summer. And they'd used a lot of salted things and crocks and making sausages and things that would last without refrigeration. So this is the crock I inherited from my mom when she died 15 years ago. Now she used, and so the recipe is basically, you take little green tomatoes. She always used little ones. I didn't think big ones would work, but the fact is, she wanted the big ones for sauce. So the big ones at the end of the season, they're not going to ripen. She'd bring them in the garage or the house and let them ripen. And so I started experimenting after she died. I used only little tomatoes, and I would go crazy trying to find little green tomatoes. And I figured out, well, maybe you can use bigger ones. So you can use bigger ones, but you want to cut them up. We can pass this around later. You can come up and look at it. If it's a little one, you just cut it in half. If it's a big one, bigger, you cut it in 4 pieces. But basically, a tomato that big, you want to cut it in half. You get a bunch of green tomatoes, and you get banana peppers that are sweet. And you clean those out and cut those into pieces about a square inch. And she used to do it in layers, and I can do it that way, but you can also do them in a big batch if you want. But you layer those in here until the crock is full.
Okay, so you're actually just putting layers of these cut-up tomatoes and banana peppers inside the crock. Is there anything else in the crock at the time?
There's a ton of salt.
Already in the crock?
No, you're mixing salt in here all the time. No, people want a recipe. She would take a handful of salt and sprinkle it around. So a good guess, I would say, is about a 1/4 cup of salt for maybe 2 cups of these. Like if you had a 2 measuring cup, I would think would be about right.
Okay.
She had these wooden blocks with strings through them so you could lift them up. The strings have worn away. She would put these blocks in here along with this big rock.
Okay, so how far, wait a minute, for just 1 second. So how far are we filling up this crock? What would you say, how big is this crock?
2 gallon.
2 gallon crock. Okay, how far are we filling it up with produce?
Here's the thing, you fill it as much as you can, all the way to the top. Yeah, well, you're also putting garlic. You're cutting up cloves of garlic and dried anise seeds. And
thank goodness your wife was here to tell us that.
I hadn't really forgotten. But so if you can get it full, great. Whatever, as many as you can fit in here. And what happens is you put the heavy weight on here, but the salt is drawing the liquid out of this. So if you do this about 3 days later, it'll be down to here. And then you have more room, and you just keep doing that over and over again. So you just keep pressing, and the fluid can overflow. Sometimes there's excess fluid you have to remove.
So basically what you need to do is you need to take your crock and put it inside something so if the fluid overflows, it'll catch that excess liquid. But to describe this for our radio listeners, what we're doing is we filled up the crock full of the banana peppers and the salt and the garlic and the green tomatoes and the anise seed, and then you're taking some type of cylindrical object to cover essentially the top of the crock, right?
Right, and now I've developed a higher tech, better way to do it, which maybe that's a horrible thing as far as tradition, but or maybe Iowa's moldier than Ohio, because I did this in Ohio, but I would have trouble with these things getting moldy and the rock getting moldy, and also this tendency to overflow. So I use the plastic cutting board, which my skills as a carpenter are not that great.
Another reason why I'm glad this is on radio, actually.
I did this with a bandsaw, thinking, boy, I could have cut a nice circle. Well, that's the best I could do, and I put a hole so you can put it. So I use this, and then I found the perfect Tupperware that has holes. It's got these holes in it. These holes in the bottom are key, because then I put this on here, and the liquid actually goes inside the Tupperware. And instead of the rock, I use a 25-pound, weight, the kind of weight that weightlifters use. So I got pictures I'll hand out here.
I definitely need a picture so that we can scan it and put it on the blog post, because otherwise no one's going to believe this is how you do this. So.
Well, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. I put the weight in a plastic bag and I put it on there. And then here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like when you take this thing out with the round cutting board still in, and then here's what they look like after you pull out the round disc.
Has everybody seen that, by the way? Of course not.
And then here's what they look like. I pulled them all out and threw them in that colander. And we do this around the end of September, and then around Christmas or New Year's we start taking them out of there and eating them. And
So
that's how
you do it at the end of September, and around Christmas or New Year's you start taking them out.
Then they're good. That's enough weight, and you have to watch them. Sometimes, if it's extremely dry, the liquid you don't want the liquid to go below the level of tomatoes. If that happens, they're drying out. You add a little bit of water back into them.
Okay, so you're always keeping them covered with liquid. That's basically it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, throughout the whole process. And is there anything that could go wrong in this process?
So far, I've been lucky. I've done it every year since my mom's died. I've never had a total failure. If you put way too much salt, I think I did that one year, and they sort of dissolved. They just kind of.
But otherwise, the salt's going to keep us from poisoning ourselves in some way, shape, or form by doing this.
As far as I know, yeah. I mean, there tends to be a mold that grows on the top. I just wipe it off and.
Okay, so I think that it's good that we say that KRUU and Great Taste do not necessarily endorse this process for use at home.
One last thing, then, when you take them out, you don't just take them from here and fry them unless you want to have like the saltiest thing on the planet. So first, I just rinse them, like maybe in the colander real quickly, and then I'll soak them a little bit for like maybe 5 minutes. You don't want to soak them too long, or they'll start to reinflate. And then I use a strainer like this to catch all the nice little seeds and things that go in it, and rinse them off nicely, and then fry them in really hot olive oil. And if you want to can you give me a hot thing? I'll show it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to, after they're ready to eat, we're going to actually rinse them and soak them for a little while, and then let's strain the seeds out and start frying them up.
No, well, you want to keep the seeds. So and then you want to cook them. These are done very nice. I like them burnt. We could have stopped here a little sooner, but this is the way my daughter loves them. And
I like them burnt too. They're really good. I wouldn't call them burnt though. They're really well cooked, and they're absolutely amazing. So
they're really unique too.
Really, really fantastic. Hold on, we have a question. Oh, it's already answered the question. Okay. Any other questions?
And you just want to add that the way you eat them then, you can put them on bread, obviously, like some of the great bread that Dick makes, or we usually have them on our pizza. We'll cook the pizza, take it out of the oven, and we'll have the peppers on the side on the table, and then we'll just, sprinkle a bunch on our pizza and eat them.
That is absolutely amazing, and there's going to be a stampede after the show, so let's make sure that there's so few. Let's make sure that everybody gets a chance to try them. Listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss. We're coming to you live from the Hy-Vee Club Room, and we are talking Italian food and Italian traditions with members of SOFIA, the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans. I want to just make sure that everybody knows that coming up on Great Taste next week, live here at the Hy-Vee Club Room, is Matt Metz. Matt is the yeah, if you know who your guest is, that might be really good. Matt Steingarter is the chef at the Lincoln Cafe in Mount Vernon, Iowa. And Matt will be here next week, and he's going to be making 2 amazing dishes: charred eggplant falafel with lemon goat cheese yogurt cream, and harissa cauliflower with local greens. So really excited to have him here and have him prepare dishes for everyone on the show next week. That's April 10th, live here at Hy-Vee in the club room. And just so everybody understands, because somebody mentioned to me that they told their wife to be listening, they're here in the audience, and they told their wife to listen to the broadcast. The broadcast is recorded now, and so the show that you are hearing was actually live the previous week. Now, I hope everybody followed that. If you didn't, don't worry. Just show up every Wednesday, either here or catch the stream on KRUU.
Very quickly, I just want to tell people this is a 15 minutes. So now I just take this and I'm rounding it out kind of in a just nice like that.
That's Dick DeAngelis now talking about the dough. He's taken it out after about 15 minutes, and he is actually... Now wait, you're taking it out after 15 minutes of what?
We've done the second... We've done that. We took it out after 12 hours, right? We put it on the board and we folded it.
Okay, so this is after the fold.
Sit for about 15 minutes, and then we shape it into kind of a round, just a round like that. Put a little more flour, and then just put a cloth on top that I put a little bit of flour on the other side of the cloth. That's going to sit for about 2 hours, and then we're going to put it in just like we put that other one, right? So I just want to let you know that one little step.
And how long is the entire process, approximately?
It depends, anywhere from 15 to 24 hours. You know, just kind of whenever you have the time to finish it up, you can. And then the only thing is it gets a little particular in that last 2 hours. Once you do take it out of the long one, then you want to set it up, fold it up, wait 15 minutes, round it out, and then in about an hour and a half or so, you want to put it in the oven. So that means you have to start the oven and warm it up because it has to get that pot really hot. That's the whole idea, is that pot is in there for about 15 minutes at that 450 degree temperature. It's gotten real hot, just like a clay oven. Then when you take that off and you put it in, it immediately adheres to it, and that's when you'll see when it comes out, it just kind of pops right out. It's like magic.
All right, so call me when it's finished, will you? All right, so now we're going to talk to Virginia Roca, because Virginia has another treat that she's preparing for all of us, and I'm really excited about this. Virginia, how did you get to be so fortunate to be a member of SOFIA and not have any Italian heritage?
Well, I was kind of sitting with Dick one day when they were talking about, gee, it would be really good to form a club of all the Italians. And I said, yeah. And he knew that I'd lived in Italy and I speak Italian. So I was really fortunate they let me join.
You got a little extra.
And I've been really thankful that I've been able to join, because it made a big difference to me making so many friends in Fairfield.
So now, what are you going to be preparing?
Well, I'm going to be preparing something that I'm calling farinata. Well, actually, so let me explain a little bit. This is a dish that's really simple. And it's just made with garbanzo beans and water and salt and pepper and maybe some parsley.
And what else?
And that's it.
That's it. Okay, so garbanzo bean flour, salt and pepper, water, and parsley.
Yeah, and that's it. You could put in maybe other herbs. And you guys are kind of guinea pigs because I've only made this a couple times. The first time I made it, I was really happy with it. The second time, I wasn't so happy with it.
Is this the third time?
No, this is about the fourth time. So the thing is, I went to Sicily with Kathleen Johnson, who I think a lot of you know. And the first evening we ate out in a restaurant, for a little appetizer, they brought us something that they called pannelle, which is a chickpea fritter made with these ingredients, and we really liked it, and it was good. And then I found out that it's really like a common street food in Sicily, especially like in Palermo, and a lot of people even use it. They make it with sandwiches, and then they put it in a sandwich, and that's their sandwich. So I kind of got interested in it, but then I never followed through with it. I had the chickpea flour sit in my cupboard for a while, and I never did anything with it. And then Lenora's always talking about when she goes over to Liguria, then there's another dish that's made with the exact same ingredients, but a slightly different process. And she's wild about it. So then she got a cookbook. I need a plate.
Somebody get Virginia a plate, please, and continue your story.
So then Lenora had a nice book that had a different recipe, a different procedure. It's the same ingredients. And it seemed like the procedure was easier, so I tried the procedure. And it came out, I was happy with it. So
it's gluten-free.
It's gluten. So the thing that kind of interested me was I thought, for Fairfield people, there's a lot of vegetarians here. So it's a vegetarian dish and doesn't have any gluten. It's low cost, kind of peasant food, street food. And so that's how I got interested in it. And that's the story.
So it's made differently, a little bit differently in different regions?
A little bit differently. So the way that they make it... Can I have another little plate?
You're really demanding. I mean, that's... yeah.
Well, hey, yeah. So the way that they make it in Sicily, from the recipes that I read and looking on YouTube, is a little bit different. They stir it up and cook it. And then they put it into like some kind of a shape, or they spread it out on a thing.
Virginia's looking around for more batter because you have a very hungry crew here.
Yeah,
so
we have to make a lot. So they made it differently. But the reason I liked the recipe in the book was it was really simple, like you can see right here what I'm doing. So really the only thing is you mix up the flour in the water and you let it set, like either overnight or at least a couple hours, and then you just fry it up.
it's basically a chickpea pancake.
Yeah. So the consistency is like pancake mix, basically.
No, but it's not sweet. But the point is that it's the consistency is like a pancake consistency, right? So that's what's important. It makes it so simple and easy to do. I mean, I do the same thing with masa harina. I make, instead of making tortillas the traditional way, I make tortilla pancakes. It's a lot faster.
Oh, really?
It's a lot faster.
That's a fantastic idea.
Well, this is just so simple too, and it's really great. And like you said, you can put other things in it. You could actually put vegetables in this, and it would be wonderful. You could put greens, like Emily was talking about at the beginning. You could julienne kale or julienne chard, and actually put that in the batter. Be fantastic. It'd be really delicious.
I think part of the trick is you need to practice it a little, because you need to kind of get used to the temperature that you want, and the pan that you're using, and the fire that you're using. But I think once you did it a few times and you kind of got that down, then it's like simple.
I can't wait to eat that. That's going to be absolutely wonderful. Now, on top of this magnificent bread that Dick has made earlier, we have some beautiful topping, and it looks like it may not be necessarily all Italian, though.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to you about that. But this is roasted tomatoes with garlic and rosemary, fresh rosemary, and olive oil, obviously. And by the way, Karen right now is going to take the top off that bread. Remember, we said after 20 minutes you take the top off. So you just open it up.
Let's see what happens. Hopefully, it's not a surprise. Huh? Oh,
that's what it looks
that
like.
Is beautiful. That's gorgeous.
And then get it right back in.
And now it's going to cook another...
Go for another 15 minutes or so, and then maybe, what was it in for, 25? Yeah. So put it in for 15.
Okay, so on top of the bread afterwards...
Okay, so we cut the bread up. We put a little olive oil. We broiled it for just a minute to get a little crunchy, okay? And then we put some feta cheese. And Steve said, feta cheese is an Italian. What are you doing? Well, you can use goat cheese if you want to do Italian. But the reality is Greece is to Italy kind of like New York is to New Jersey. So, you don't go, oh, you got your cheese in New York? What are you doing, Italians use things from Greece all the time. And I think it tastes a little better with feta cheese. So we put some feta cheese on it. We're going to throw it under the broiler again just for a little bit, get it just that little bit of warmth. And you always have to be careful with the broiler because you can burn things in a hurry, and you've put a lot of time into it. So keep your eyes open. And then what happens just in terms of the roasted, how we did that is we just cut up. I like to use Roma tomatoes, so you cut those right in half. You put some olive oil on top of them. You put the some garlic cloves in there. You put some rosemary. You just take them off of the stems and you put it around, and you just throw it into your oven. I put it in at the lowest possible temperature. I think we did 300 last time, and then we just put it in for a couple hours. One time in the middle of it, I just kind of roll them around a little bit, maybe flip them over or something, and then just let them roast. And then sometimes you just shut off the oven and let them just sit there overnight if you want. And then they come out beautiful, dried, and we use regular tomatoes because Steve felt the quality was even better with the regular tomatoes, so we cut those in half and then in quarters. They were nice and plump. On a cookie sheet like this, and you just put them in. It's very easy, and then what you get out of this, we'll just throw these in here, and then we'll cut them up again for you, and we'll share it with whoever would like some.
And I think that you can find plenty of different recipes for roasting tomatoes online, and the key is really taking your time. I mean, you can do it quickly, but if you take your time, you're going to get a lot better results. It's going to become very candy-like and delicious, and it's something that you can do all winter long. You don't have to miss fresh tomatoes in the winter. It's not the same as a fresh tomato, but it just focuses the flavor. Whatever flavor's in that tomato becomes very, very focused after you let it sit in that delicious mixture of whether you're using fresh rosemary and some garlic and some olive oil and some other herbs. It really just takes them to another level, and you'll love it. It's terrific. All right, so Dan, yes, sir. Do you have anything else you need to tell us about that minestra that you have going here? Because one of the things that I noticed that I wanted to mention is that people who are familiar with Italian may realize that the words that you were using were not really Italian words as such, but they were Italian dialect. And it seems like that was a very typical way to speak for many Italians when they came to the States. They brought their own dialect here, and many times what you find is that the actual word is shortened.
Yeah. From the southern part of Italy, I know, talking to Dick and some of the other people from Calabria, a lot of times the last letter is left off, like my grandmother never said ragatta, she said ragot. And so a lot of times the last vowel is left off the words when they speak, and that's just, it was almost considered like slang, or like peasant talk, from the part of Italy that they came from.
And, for example, pasta fazool.
Right.
And fagioli is
right.
It's very interesting, just to hear all the different dialects and the different ways that people brought different dialects that people brought with them from Italy.
Yes, and maybe a story that people don't know is the greatest Italian race car driver was named Fazzulli, and he never lost a race because no one ever pasta Fazzulli.
Okay, that's good. I think we'll move on quickly.
One more thing is, in this dish, if you like, a lot of people can put a little. If you like a little heat, you can put some crushed red pepper on the minestra fazool. Or a little Parmesan cheese, grated Parmesan cheese.
What I have really enjoyed, there's another suggestion also. Hold on. What I've really enjoyed is that the wives have been helping their husbands dramatically during this entire hour.
We'd be nothing without them. I'd still be home in the kitchen hoping to get here with something if it wasn't for my wife.
So what was that last suggestion, Eloise? Okay, Dan, please incorporate that.
Yeah. You add a little salt. Whatever, salt to taste. I mean, if it was me, it would be a little bit saltier, but I don't know, everyone doesn't like the same amount of salt, so we went a little light on the salt. There's some here if you want to put some in.
So remember this for your next time you come to the show. We don't care what everyone likes. We only care that we use the right amount of salt, and your salt amount is going to be my salt amount. So
perfect.
That's the way we like to think around here. No. Somebody just asked if they could start passing the food around. The answer is no, because otherwise we turn into complete chaos in the room. I've never seen people who seemingly from week to week, it looks like they've never eaten in between coming to the show. So it looks like these garbanzo bean fritters are terrific looking.
Well, I hope they taste good.
So I'm going to try one and see. Oh.
So in Sicily they call them pannelle, and then in Liguria they call them farinata, and the ones in Liguria are made in an oven usually, and the ones in Sicily are deep fried. So, but the ingredients are exactly the same.
That would be interesting to see what they turn out like in the oven. That's interesting to me to think about, because you're actually baking them, right?
In the oven, they're much thinner because they use these large copper pots, high heat, a little olive oil on the bottom, and the wood-burning oven, is really, really hot. And then it's flavored with the wood, like maybe chestnut wood or something like that, some other flavored wood. So it's thinner than that. So that's why when you said pancake, it doesn't always look that thick.
It could be a thin pancake or a thicker pancake, depending upon what part of Italy you're from, right? So that's cool. You've been listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss. We are coming to you live from the Hy-Vee Club Room, along with many members of the Society of Fairfield Italian Americans who have prepared amazing delicacies for all of us. Oh, did I say that because the show is almost over and we haven't served the food and I just realized I had to go somewhere, that if you come back next week, then maybe we'll serve. Okay, that probably didn't go over. All right. Anyway, we'll get to that shortly. Anybody else who has Italian heritage that wants to share anything with any of our listeners? Nobody wants to share. Yes, okay.
About 6 years ago, I went to Calabria, where my family's from. I think there are probably 4 million Calabrians that immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s. Does that sound right?
Who are you asking?
I'm asking the other Calabrian guys over there.
So you think at least 4 million?
Calabria is one of the 20 regions of Italy, and it's in the foot of the boot. Yes. So anyway, I met my grandfather's baby sister, who was then 92 years old. Out of 8 children, she was the one that was left. And it was like I was an adopted child, and I met my real family. And my husband, Jay, was with me. It was pretty incredible. And I went to my grandparents' old stone huts up in the mountains where they grew up.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. All right. 60 minutes of delicious radio is just about over, except that a wife has one more point that she wants to make quickly.
No, it's not for my husband. It's actually for Virginia. What oil did you use, Virginia?
Well, for this particular thing, you want to use an oil with a high smoke point. So I found this grapeseed oil that I'm using. But you could use any oil that has a high smoke point. I don't think you should use olive oil for this particular one.
All right, thank you to the Society of Fairfield Society of Fairfield Italian Americans. Buon appetito tutti.
Taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.